Unlocking the Soul, hosted by Rob Simperman and produced by Simplify Films. Episodes cover mature and controversial themes, including death, murder, and suicide. Consider this when deciding whether and when to watch.
10. Hell and Heaven. Let's start with perhaps the most common preconception we have about the afterlife. Aren't we all just on a path to either heaven or hell? Edgar Cayce said, "From what may anyone be saved? Only from themselves. That is their individual hell. They dig it with their own desires." Our spiritual experts agree that there is no hell. There is no personified evil or Satan. Nor is there an eternal damnation. The idea that good needs to be balanced by evil is just a rationalization for our fallibility by our logical minds. As Canon's subjects tell her, there is no good or bad souls, only evolving souls, but some have bad lives. This is obvious to our higher selves, but our earthly minds get confused by ego and logic. Preconceived visuals such as hell do feature in some death glimpses for those who expect to see them, but that all falls away as soon as we adjust to the spirit world, our home as many call it. We soon realize the true nature of our spirit world situation. But then what of religions that push the idea of hell? This is a counterproductive idea for spiritual growth. As Seth says, to liberate the soul means that one needs to be free of fear, and any religion that dictates a fear-based doctrine of hell or damnation cannot liberate a soul. One will never leave a house when one is told what's outside the house will kill them. This is about freedom now. In fact, Paul Selig tells us that there is outrage in the higher dimensions that man created damnation for himself when there was meant to be love, and that we have the slaughtering of innocents on earth in the name of God, who is nothing but love made manifest. And there isn't a heaven either, in those terms. Seth says that we may visualize a stereotyped heaven when glimpsing our doorway to the spirit world based on our preconceived ideas. He describes, existence demands development, and such a heaven would be sterile, boring, and indeed deadly. Now, there are upper astral levels that could be compared to heaven because they're so beautiful and filled with love. That's where you'd go after progressing beyond the entire cycle of Earth lives. But even there's plenty of work to do. It's very rare that one comes back to Earth from such higher levels except to fulfill a narrative or mission like a Buddha or Jesus did. So our knowledge is limited. This may be where Seth comes from, and he too assures us death is no eternal resting place. In fact, he says his present existence is the most challenging he has known, and he has known many, both physical and non-physical. So if there is a spirit world, how do we get there? 11. Exiting the body. Life is a process of becoming, and death is a part of this process, according to Seth. Our sources of spiritual expertise agree that each life plan includes one or more exit point. People die when they are ready, and for specific reasons, even if we're not consciously aware of these plans. There are no accidents when it comes to death. Seth described a man who walked out of his building during an earthquake and was promptly killed by a falling brick. While that appeared to be a freak accident, he explains that man exercised free will, saying his higher self, or what we may call his soul, decided 3 days earlier in terms of Earth time to select that exit, that it would be appropriate for his purpose and his path. We aren't privy to the timing nor the reasons while alive. As many explain it, a test isn't very useful if we know the answers in advance. In fact, people under hypnosis are not allowed to foresee their own deaths. Such refusals to answers are almost unheard of in standard hypnosis, but common when broaching forbidden subjects in regression hypnotherapy. That's seen by many as evidence of its legitimacy. We are told our consciousness may leave our body entirely before the time of physical death. Canon described a woman whose soul left her body before being burned at a stake. She watched her body screaming as the fire engulfed it. So take some comfort knowing that people who died a traumatic death likely watched it as if from a movie. Furthermore, there is agreement that souls aren't frightened of death. When it's happening, it feels like going home. One of Canon's subjects described it like pushing off from the bottom of a pool and then breaking through the surface of the water. Another says, "Death is so easy. It's like getting out of this chair and sitting down in that chair." And one of Newton's subjects compared shedding the body to peeling a banana with one big swoosh. Seth says that birth is more like a shock than death is. In fact, sometimes we don't even realize it when we die. but birth typically involves a sharp and sudden recognition. He implores us not to fear death based on his experience with dying numerous times. A similar comparison from one of Newton's subjects is that when comparing the instant of birth with that of death, the physical shock of being born is much greater. And Seth reminds us that there is no distinct point of death because our consciousness is not tied to the body. It's like how our bodily cells are completely different from those that made us up 10 years ago, or how our consciousness, quote, flickers off and on throughout the day and night, end quote, as you focus in other realities, lose track of time, or enter sleep cycles. Cannon regressed someone who died as a 9-year-old girl. She said, quote, I couldn't swim. The dark just closed in around me. I could feel my chest burning. Then I came out of it into the light, and it didn't matter anymore, end quote. But she knew the water wasn't deep. She needed to overcome her fear and stand up. So she would come back to Earth to try to overcome fear the next time around. 12. Crossing the barrier. I feel thoughts of love, companionship, empathy, and it's all coming with anticipation, as if others are waiting for me. Dr. Michael Newton. It has been widely reported that we see a bright white light during near-death experiences. Regression subjects report that the energy of the white light is so intense that it severs the silver cord that's said to connect the soul to the body. At that point, returning is no longer an option. The soul then enters the so-called mid-plane of existence, like a foyer for the spirit world. Some describe a sensation of pulling away from the place they died, and the euphoric sense of freedom and brightness around them, or further away, causing the tunnel effect. This isn't scary, but rather brings a sense of relief. Memories of our beautiful spiritual home begin to flood back into our minds. When the soul has shed the body, it's usually a period of excitement and exhilaration. Cannon notes that her subject's voice immediately becomes light and free. But this phase can be very disorienting. Some souls have difficulty letting go of their responsibilities or attachments to the physical world, particularly someone who dies suddenly or traumatically. Though one of Cannon's subjects says it's more likely a problem for a mother dying in childbirth than a soldier in the battlefield. These clinging souls take some time before crossing the barrier, whether it be returning to their homes or remaining at the site of their death. Cannon describes how some souls are unsure about why they're seeing mourning loved ones or upset bystanders. But she says that we usually understand pretty quickly due to our heightened perceptions in the spirit world once the veil of amnesia fully lifts. Newton also refers to hovering soul syndrome for those who need closure, such as younger people who feel death as a jolt. Seth notes the dead often attend their own funeral as they're coming to terms with or fascinated by their physical death. Some even try to reanimate their own corpse, which doesn't work. The typical 3 to 5 day funeral arrangement period feels appropriate for souls to remain, to respect the memory of their physical life, and to be on hand to comfort loved ones. In fact, there are 2 vivid stories from my own family of loved ones appearing as they looked in younger adulthood to someone who hadn't yet learned of their passing. Another category of souls who linger for longer periods of time are what we might call ghosts. A lingering soul who is experiencing strong emotions can even use them to focus their consciousness and manipulate physical objects. This may be done for positive or negative intentions. After a period of frustration, they realize being unable to interact with people makes finishing their work impossible. They get bored of trying and move on through the barrier. If not, Seth says there's a honorary guard of souls ready to step in and assist in the transition, including both out-of-body souls who are currently incarnated, often while sleeping, as well as specialist souls from the spirit world who are more familiar with difficult transitions. To ease the transition, expectations and beliefs are allowed to shape the initial experience. To those with a strongly Christian expectation, Seth says these spirit guides may take on the guise of those figures of Christian icons or saints to limit disorientation during the transition, even if the true situation is soon revealed more accurately. Newton describes some lighthearted scenes where guides and soul group members put on masks to simulate their returning friends' expectations, then soon take them off to reveal their familiar, comforting faces. Our guides become part of our hallucination to help us transition. He talks about how Each body imprints on a soul, which takes a while to dissipate, so a soul is bathed in an energy shower to restore it. He asks the subject if the ravages of the physical body and the human mind leave an emotional mark on the soul after death. God, yes. My very expression, who I am as a being, was affected by the brain and body I occupied. He also draws a parallel between such transition periods and the concept of purgatory, which is a transitory state of temporary banishment for sins of a minor nature, and the Tibetan Buddhist concept of the bardo, a spiritual separation between lives to absolve evil acts. Cannon found that souls who die while addicted to drugs, alcohol, lust, or other low-energy habits are not ready to reincarnate. They spend time watching the physical world as if trying to satisfy their cravings. This is similar to the Buddhist concept of the hungry ghosts, but when ready to move on, they get the same assistance and healing that other souls do and resume their reincarnation cycle. Newton also found the root cause of many seemingly evil acts is when soul influence, known as conscience, is too weak to override human impulse. This could simply be the result of underestimating the portion of a soul's energy required for a particular incarnation, or overestimating their current skill level. These souls will likely get an earful from their guide and the elders, but will not face damnation as they go through the recuperation process. In fact, Cannon's and Newton's subjects reveal another way that very damaged souls recuperate and repair energy after a hard life. They can take as long as they need in what some describe as an emerald city, where they get help from specialists. Seth also described an initial stage for those still focused strongly in the physical reality and in need of a period of rest. He similarly says our guides can hallucinate a hospital or rest home on our behalf for a break, or to orient us to the situation. These facilities are also used to prep new souls for new physical realities, such as how to translate emotions into reality. But after we're ready to fully cross over into the spirit world, who do we meet and what do we experience next?